be rolling back and how then that might impact our ability to help support our students. I'm unclear about all of this type of information, and that's, I mean, I said the other day, that's the kind of thing that I needed to see in order to be able to be comfortable making a decision, and I don't feel that that's been provided.
Is the information provided later in the packet helpful?
No, that's the information I'm talking about. It's on page 12. Is that what page you're on? So you have some things, but if you go up to, go up a little bit more. So you have here at the top, strategic investments and advising, you know, will be rolled back. I don't know what that means. So I don't know, in a world where, I mean, I will tell you right now, I am not supportive of a tuition increase. That is where I currently am. So I am trying to get a full picture understanding of what that means for the college, because it is a very, very hard decision. But when I'm spending time doing all of this research on my own about the top, you know, we all know it, right? Top 10 challenges to student success. 64% say it's work and paying expenses. We have our CDR is down, that's great, but we're still at a 20% CDR. We still have a federal borrowing rate of 54%. We have typical federal debt of $13.5 thousand students are leaving here with. I'm trying to balance all of that stuff against what it means to then lose money for our investments. So I personally need more concrete information on the impact on our investments that outweighs all of those numbers that I just said. And I'm not there yet.
Yeah, and without a $6 increase, that's $1.25 million to the budget. And that money has to come from somewhere. So if it comes from the investment category, we would then be making $2.2 million of investments into things that we found important through our program planning, our strategic planning, our department reports. That money will have to come from somewhere. So it might mean fewer advisors. It might mean fewer open student service hours. It might mean fewer faculty members. It might be less staff. It will mean less technology in the classrooms. All of the things we're able to invest in, without those dollars, we would not be able to invest.
I understand what it might mean. I'm not asking what it might mean. I'm literally asking what it means. So I get the generalized talking points. I totally understand that. That's not what I'm asking for personally in order to be able to make a decision on increasing tuition by $6 a credit hour. When I was at this point before walking this room, and you can tell I spent a significant amount of time with this document that you guys sent, and I appreciate the work that went into it. But with all of my heart and soul, I believe everything that the students are saying. I believe that before I even got here today. And so I'm really struggling with, am I doing a disservice to the students by increasing tuition, or am I doing a disservice to the students by not increasing tuition because it doesn't allow me to make the investments I need to make? And I do not have enough information provided to me to make that determination.
Rosie.
I think we've reached a point in the meeting where we're going on record about where we stand, and I want my colleagues to know that I too am not prepared to support a tuition increase. And my reasons are somewhat similar in the sense that they're, for me, tuition is an equity issue. We spent a lot of time talking last January, I guess it was, about how we apply the equity lens at Lane Community College. And to me, this is a cardinal example of where that equity lens needs to come into play. A lot of you know I grew up in the community college movement in this state, and I can tell you that community colleges were started as an alternative to expensive four-year universities that some students could not qualify or did not choose to attend, but still deserve the opportunity. And Lane County taxpayers started Lane Community College to be an option for all Lane County residents, all district residents. And I am concerned that the cumulative effect of annual tuition increases simultaneous to a time in history when housing costs have skyrocketed and other costs have gone up are pricing our community members out of access to Lane. I think we have a moral responsibility to hold the line on tuition. I'm not prepared to support a tuition increase at Lane for the foreseeable future. As long as enrollment continues flat and a 1% increase in non-credit students doesn't do it for me, as long as enrollment is flat, to me, that's a signal that people who used to be able to work part-time and come to school part-time aren't coming to school. And I want them to have access. I want students to have access. I have high anxiety that the pendulum about careful policy consideration around tuition has sort of swung over much to the other side. The original desire to consider tuition on an annual basis was a response to a period in history when previous boards didn't raise tuition, and then when they finally did, they raised it at such a level that it was a stunning and breathtaking impact on students, and there was a desire not to have that kind of huge impact again. But I worry that we've gone too far the other way, and this constant reliance on tuition, I think, is at odds. I love the way you put it, Melanie. Is it better to not increase tuition, or is it better to increase tuition to be able to make those investments? At the end of the day, I don't think we can afford to raise tuition. I don't think students can afford to pay an increased tuition, and I think we have a moral responsibility to our students.
Thank you. I have Matt, and then I have Phil and Susie. Are you wanting to get in line somewhere?
Yes, anywhere is fine.
Okay, I'll have Matt, Phil, and Susie.
We do have a moral responsibility to provide a comprehensive opportunity for every student that comes to Lane Community College. And no colleague, past, present, dare I say future, is a pro-tuition colleague. Myself and others have advocated in Washington, D.C. and in Salem for debt-free and tuition-free higher education. That's the goal. And right now, we've made great strides here in the state. Oregon Promise offers the cohort of recent graduates, I believe from the class of 2015, 2016, 2017, and there's the current crop of 2018, 2019 students will achieve and realize tuition-free higher education after grants and scholarships are applied for. We can expand that, and we should expand that. But it takes an investment in revenue building, revenue generating. And this board took a bold step back in, I want to say, 2010, supporting measures 66 and 67. We took a bold step in, I believe, 2017, supporting measure 101, both January ballot measures. And I predict this board will continue to take bold steps to get our lawmakers back when it comes to creative revenue generating tax fairness ballot measures that will ultimately allow us to achieve the goal of expanding debt-free and tuition-free higher education. The rub is that without a nominal increase, the one funding lever that the board has, without a nominal, modest increase, there will be not just jobs lost, but programs severely cut and gutted. And the moral responsibility we have is to provide a comprehensive, accessible college. I have a very visceral reaction when I start to think of programs that just are hanging by the thread because of student energy and one faculty member who are working hard to recruit and retain and promote an expeditious pathway to a four-year or into the career field of a student's choice. And if we don't recognize that modest nominal increase that's adjusted relative to a cost of living increase, an inflationary increase, I'm not here advocating for a $38. I think that we can be prudent, we can be pragmatic, and we can be progressive. Again, no one, myself included, is pro tuition increase, but there is a modest reasonable, there's a modest and reasonable solution that's presented to us. And if we take the easy, politically convenient route of not moving the needle at all, we cut into the core of this college in a way that is disturbing and morally unsound, in that we wouldn't offer the comprehensive liberal arts education and opportunity that we currently offer. I empathize. I hear you. We heard from a Board of Education candidate earlier who's $34,000 in debt. I'm not so far off in that as a former Lane student myself. So we need to continue to advocate and find creative ways to achieve debt-free, tuition-free higher education. It doesn't come overnight. And I thank you again, students and staff and faculty and administrators, for continuing the advocacy. And I want to make it really clear, since we're going on record, what our position is, if you haven't figured it out by now. It's a modest, it's an adoption of the modest proposal, with the caveat, this is where we roll up our sleeves and continue our advocacy in Salem, with the caveat that if we're fairly and equitably funded, we roll back that tuition increase. Because right now it's like we're playing darts with a moving target. So, colleagues, I implore you to consider the most reasonable scenario in front of us and recognize the moral argument. But cutting programs, those aren't just jobs. Those are the classes you're all attending. The advisors that help you move through Lane Community College, eliminated without that investment, that modest, nominal investment. So, colleagues, I urge you to consider the most reasonable, rational scenario in front of you, and let's see if we can really think creatively about rolling that back if our lawmakers fairly and equitably fund the Community College Support Fund. Thank you.
Okay, I have Phil, then Susie, and then Melanie.
Lisa can go before me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa and then Melanie.
So, I want clarification on this $6 tuition increase. It's tied to the HEPI?
It's higher.
It's a little
higher.
It's higher.
I had the HEPI, okay.
It's a little
Yeah, because I remember seeing a lower number before. So, I fully agree with Matt. There is a real thing in budgeting where you have to adjust, you know, with the new fiscal year, right? So, a nominal increase. I am not pro this $6. I'm not in tune with this idea either. Most definitely not 38. So the way I see it is, yes, to the rate of inflation, we pick an index, right? We'll have that discussion that can help us. We have that lever that we were talking about. But further than that, it is in effect a tuition freeze. I do want to thank Melanie for saying it so, articulating it so well. If the investment that we are proposing is going to help some of the programs, and we're going to bolster like enrollment, then by all means, let's have a better discussion then, a more informed discussion about it. If that can't be proved, I'm sorry, you're just saying then that, you know, from one big hole we're going to divvy up money in 10 other different holes, you know? And I'm not a fan of that either. So, the program that most recently has touched me and my family are the nurses at Riverbend and Mackenzie Willamette. They're taking care of my baby boy who was just born 2 weeks ago. And he is in the NICU. They are passionate. I mean, people say they make great money. I don't think they make enough money, right? And they're responding to life-threatening situations and conditions for these preemies or newborns with a lot of medical conditions. And if it can be proven that some of this money is going to these type of programs or programs much like those, it's not just the nursing program, then by all means, let's talk about that. But if that's not being proven to us, you know, I gotta tell you, I see these boxes and the immediate visual to me, I'm being constrained in my options here. And I am not a fan of that. So I agree with my colleagues. We want more information on that, one. And two, more information, let me articulate it a little better, more information on whether these investments, there could be some proof that's actually going to help these programs and increase enrollment. The other is that I agree with my colleague. You know, even just the most nominal increase will help a little bit in our budgetary decisions. However, I am not saying $6. I'm definitely saying less than $6. That's what I'm looking for. And after that, complete tuition freeze for 2019-2020. So.
Okay, I have Susie, Lisa, and Melanie.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I try not to be repetitive, but when we were talking about funding from the state, I'm not confident at this point that extra money is going to come rolling our way and the money's not going to differ very much